I am out of the loop. Y'all, despite being a romance reader, I've been neglecting my one true love lately, Kindle Unlimited. The bald man in charge may or may not be the devil, but the authors that publish their books via Kindle Unlimited certainly are not. In my quest to keep you up on what's new and hot in romance, I've mostly been reading from Goodreads lists, and those books tend to be traditionally published. At this point, my traditionally published reading has been outpacing my indie published, KU published reading. And I don't love that. I never thought we'd get to this point. But fear not, today we're going to remedy that by doing a little something that I have done twice before, reading the romance bestsellers in the Amazon store. Giving indie authors their shine, potentially finding new romances to love, and honestly just doing a lot of self-care in the process. Pulling out my slut Kindle, cozying up, telling you what books are hits and what are misses. But before we get into it, in the spirit of self-care, I have to tell you about the sponsor of today's video who have been really adding to my own personal self-care routine, Foreo. For 2 months now, I have been incorporating the FAQ 202 into my routine, and I'm continuing to see such a difference in my skin. It's a new generation of LED face mask that's made of silicone that is ultra lightweight, wireless, and super comfortable. And I've been popping this on for about 15 minutes 4 times a week on the days that I am not filming. Because the mask itself is made out of silicone, it does a really good job at molding to my face shape, and I'm able to move around really freely. Though I have to say my favorite way to wear this mask is by popping it on and laying back and reading a book. You know me, I like my me time, I like my self-care time, and this is like the perfect time to do it, is whenever I am reading for videos. I pop this on and I'm like doing double duty. I'm doing work and I'm also taking care of myself. For the past couple of years, I've really been hearing so much about the benefits of LED, and I have been trying to get my hands on a mask that employs that technology, specifically near infrared, because it does really incredible things to tackle the signs of skin aging. And not only does this mask use NIR, but it also has 8 different wavelengths to tackle all of our different skin concerns. And now that I have been using this mask for 2 months, I feel like I'm noticing even more benefits. I think last time we talked, I mentioned that my skin was just looking overall smoother and I was seeing reduced redness, which I still am. Now I'm also starting to notice that my skin is healing a little bit better whenever I do get like hormonal acne around that time of the month, which makes sense because it re-strengthens the different layers of the skin. Other benefits include reduced wrinkles and fine lines, evening skin tone with less visible sunspots, and minimizing pores. And again, it's been really nice being able to spend a little bit of extra time on myself beyond just my typical skincare routine, washing my face, moisturizing, that sort of, without having to resort to spending a lot of money on like in-office procedures. This does exactly what I am looking for, and I get to do it in the comfort of my own home. And right now, Foreo is offering my lovely subscribers 30% off all Foreo products, which also includes discounted items and their Foreo bestsellers. So if you use the code 30chandler, you'll get 30% off, or you can click the link in my description down below. Thanks again to Foreo for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Let's get reading those Kindle bestsellers, shall we? Hello, party people. I've got many cats behind me. 3 specifically, and 1 on my dresser, and I wanted to update you on the first book that we're reading, which is called Forbidden Vows by, I think, Casey Crown. This author is known for such works: Baby for Daddy's Friend, Triplets for the Millionaire, and Quadruple Daddies, and Nanny for the Dawn, can't forget. I mean, she's written a lot more. Prolific author. We're reading this one. Basically, I think it should be retitled like Baby for the Bratva Silver Fox, because that's kind of the vibe we got going here. Okay, we got Anton, it's our hero. We have Eileen, our heroine. She is the daughter of the Irish mobster. She is supposed to marry kind of an underling, I guess, for the Bratva, for the Russian mob. This gets a little fucked up when she gets kidnapped, kind of saved from the club one night, and ends up fucking the silver fox. He's just too goddamn sexy, and she can't help but look at the twinkling pre-cum that he's got rocking. Yeah, the sex scenes and the descriptors, crazy for this one. Anyway, she gets kidnapped / saved from the club because there's like a shooting kind of situation going on by this older gentleman, and he finds her curves really sexy, which is important because everybody is comfortable calling this woman fat to her face, which I think is a little bit crazy. This guy thinks she's really hot. They fuck, she gets pregnant, finds out that this man is actually engaged to her sister, who is supposed to be marrying one of the boss men of the mob. So the guy Eileen is engaged to is kind of like an underling. He's like a part of a different family, and then Anton is part of like the head of the Russian mob. A series of events happen. She ends up marrying him because obviously she's having his baby, and I think this pisses her sister off quite a bit. I'm sure that that's going to be the conflict of the book. Like, her sister's going to come for her and maybe try to kill her. I don't know. She's, pregnant though, so that would be pretty awkies. It's inevitable, I feel like, for these, that there's always going to be some sort of mafia story. I feel like I hear a lot of people talking about mafia stories nowadays. I think that they're not maybe the most popular, but they still have a foothold. They still have people by their necks, I guess, because again, there's always one or two in the like top 10, top 20 Amazon's romance and bestsellers. And how am I feeling about it? I'm feeling like some of the descriptors are pretty fucking gross. I'm feeling like the sex scenes are plentiful, not all that great. The first sex scene is okay. Well, I don't want to say it's like great or anything, but it at least made me giggle. The beginning of this book's kind of crazy too with the way that it's written. It does make me giggle. As the story is carried on, sex scenes still fairly plentiful, which seems uncomfortable being heavily pregnant with twins, but what do I know? No, I'm not super invested in this story. Like, our heroine, of course, has to deal with like a really overprotective husband, and she's pregnant with his babies. She's having to stay at home a lot, and she's pissed about this, and she wants to leave, and I'm sure she's gonna like escape and maybe get hurt or something like that. But it's fine, but it's nothing spectacular. Certainly better than some of the others that I've read, but maybe I'm just being generous. It's been a hot second since I read KU books, and sometimes it's just refreshing. It is just refreshing, because like, you're not gonna get this, you know, in traditionally published romance. You're just simply not gonna get this level of crazy, and so sometimes it can be kind of fun. That being said, I'm getting a little bored as the story's carrying on. I think the beginning, again, was more fun, more exciting. I don't care so much about the dynamics of the mob infighting amongst the Russians, and they're like, well, but we've got to make sure that we keep our ties good to all these other, you know, groups of people who also are mob people, like the Mexican mob and the Chinese and Japanese mobs. I don't care about that, to be honest. I don't really care about anything going on in this book, but I do hope Eileen has a safe delivery. You know, it seems like she's being delivered plentiful orgasms, which I guess is all we could hope for. So I'm gonna finish this, and then we can read something totally different. I think it's gonna be kind of more of a country club style romance with a billionaire. Not all that different, I guess, from this, because I think this man's probably rich. They're in a mansion. Well, folks, it seems like all's well that ends well when you end up with a silver fox brat vadaddy. Didn't hate this, if I'm being honest with you. It had an air of whimsy to it, dare I say. Wasn't enamored with the crazy soap opera action movie fucking ending of this book, but I think that was to be expected, and I think it's hard to rate a book based on I enjoyed it when I know that this book was not meant for me. I didn't pick this book up intending to absolutely love it, and I think that if you enjoy a mafia story, you're not looking for a lot of like rich depth, maybe you would like this. The only thing I would say that really stuck out to me is like why the heroine was really obsessed with opening her own cafe. And I understand having dreams, but also it's like, at what point do you just say, hey, I'm married to a mafia man and this doesn't make sense? And what point do you open the cafe anyway? Except for I think it gets like bombed. But I think I've already said too much. I don't want to spoil this one for you in case you'd like to pick it up for yourself. I think I'd probably give this like 3 stars. You know, the old me, the more sinister, well, that's not the word I'm looking for. More cynical me, maybe sinister as well. The more cynical me probably would have given this book like 2 stars. I'm gonna give it 3 though. It was fine. It was a fine book. Don't look in this book for deep relationship development, characters that have motivations beyond just like fucking and like, I don't know, the blandest of bland. I want to do a job and I can't do a job because of my life circumstance. If that is, you know, fine with you and you don't care about the depth, you're not looking for an Abby Jimenez, you know, type beat or an Emily Henry, you know, I think you know what you're getting when you're picking this book up. 3 stars. Let's move on, shall we, to In Good Company by Kat Singleton. This is the second book that I'm reading by this author, not a new to me author, but new-ish. I will be honest with you, I cannot super remember the first book that I read by her, but I remember thinking it was decent. I think I gave it like maybe 3 or 4 stars. This one I am enjoying. It is also, in my humble opinion, lacking in depth, but I'm not that mad about it. I'm like 40% of the way into this one, and ordinarily I, give you a 50% update, but I have to take a bath, okay? My hair is dirty, and I'm gonna read the rest of this while I'm in there. This one is about our 2 main characters, Lucy and Callahan, aka Cal. Our heroine is in the Hamptons because she is working there over the summer. She's gonna take over her family's business in Virginia after the summer is over. This is her last summer working here. It actually might be her first summer, I'm not really sure, but she wanted to kind of live her dream of getting to cook, be kind of like a personal chef to people. So she's been working some like various parties and also working at the local country club to kind of like make ends meet this one summer before again she goes back to work at her family's business. We don't know what the business is. Maybe we'll find out one day. I'm not quite sure, nor am I quite convinced because we've really not had much exposition about her family life or anything. The only thing that we know is that Lucy used to date Cal's younger brother, Oliver. Okay. And Oliver unceremoniously dumped our heroine for her best friend, which is pretty shitty. This was back in college. Now, Cal is a very fancy billionaire man. He is in the Hamptons doing businessy things, and he sees Lucy working at, this one gentleman's house, like catering a dinner, I guess. This guy's a total piece of shit. Cal basically lays him the fuck out verbally, offers to give our heroine a full-time job, a job that is going to pay her more than the country club and the, random odd job she's kind of been working. In exchange, he gets good food, I guess, you know what I mean? He's gonna pay her a lot and he's gonna get good food out of it. And also, the attention and company of Lucy, who he's kind of into. Lucy, after some, back and forth or I don't want to do this, like it'd be so weird working for you, I used to date your brother, she decides she's going to work for Cal. And so far, it's basically just a sexual tension fest, right? We're squirting whipped cream on waffles. We're licking our fingers. We're longing glances across the counter. It's fun. It's a fun time. I definitely am feeling the chemistry between hero and heroine. The dialogue's snappy and quick. I like the setting a lot. It definitely has me excited for summer. Our heroine's going to the farmer's market to pick up fresh vegetables and shit to like cook. And it's all just very delightful. Like I'm just imagining myself in this life of luxury. I'm enjoying that. The thing, again, that I think is missing here for me, a little bit more depth to the story. I was really thinking in the first 20-ish% of the book, we would be getting a little bit more exposition, again, on what the family business is, what our heroine's dreams are. We know she likes to cook and she might want to have a TikTok or Instagram to share her recipes. We do know that about her, but I'm not really getting her character motivations and what her hopes and dreams are. And I get that not every story is going to do that. I think it's just been a while since I've read a romance that doesn't try to do that, right? Because most of the stuff I'm reading right now is traditionally published. Henry, I just read, and Abby Jimenez, authors that are really focused on the depth and maybe sometimes don't go as hard with the romance because they're trying to, I guess, make your characters go through a lot. And I think there could be a balance, right? I think this is kind of on the far side. It is very romance and we're not really getting a ton of room to breathe. We really have not had any chapters where the hero and heroine aren't together, which to me, not a bad thing, but there's not a whole lot of breathing room, for our characters to have a moment and then retreat and reflect on that moment. But, I'm not upset about it. I do prefer more time with characters together than apart, so I'm definitely not upset. I just want just a touch more depth, and I think that this would be quite literally perfect. Everything is great, the writing's great, again, the setting's great. There's not really much to nitpick here. Just depends what kind of story you're looking for. And not everybody is looking for a super deep story. And I'm not saying that deep is better, Sometimes surface level and sexy is also fun. So I'll finish this book. I will let you know my thoughts and feelings, and hopefully Pepper will not vomit on my bed. Jesus Christ. This man. He eats his wet food while I film, and then he comes up here, begs for attention, and he burps, and it's is he gonna throw up? He does sometimes throw up after eating too quickly. All right, divas. Recently back from Pilates. I'm not looking the best. It's okay. I finished In Good Company by Kat Singleton. I thought we could talk about it. If you hear the screams of young children, those are my next door neighbors. I don't have young children, and no one is outside actively dying. It's just the screeches of the two little girls next door. And honestly, more power to them, hanging out outside. This was cute. I don't feel like I have a ton to add to my initial thoughts about this book because I don't feel like this really went deep. Sure, the conflict of the book has a little bit more depth to it, I guess you could say, but for me, if you're going to include tidbits about the heroine's family life, I want it to be more than just the conflict of the book, you know what I mean? I felt like her trauma and or her relationship with her parents was really only brought up as a way to have something to have a conflict about near the end of the story. I don't feel like it really added to depth or the richness of her character or of these two's relationship. But for what this book was and what this book set out to accomplish, I think it did a good job. I think this would be a really fun summer read if you're looking for something smutty, something kind of low stakes, and something formulaic in a good way. I feel like what I'm saying makes it sound like I'm nagging this book almost, or giving you mixed signals, and I'm not trying to do that. I do just like to be as transparent as I can about what the vibe of a book is. I don't want you to go into this expecting it to be again, the next Abby Jimenez. It's not, but it is a really fun time. So I think I'd probably give this book 3 stars. I would recommend checking it out. If you have a KU subscription, I mean, I don't want to say it's free to you, but the books that I'm talking about for the most part are from KU. So it's why not just pick this book up? It'll take you maybe 3 hours to get through, and it's a nice way to spend a sunny day. This would be really great on the beach, or if you happen to be in the Hamptons for some reason. I mean, you can read this there for the atmosphere. I'm not really sure. It was fun. It was a good time. Let's move on to something else. I don't know what's next, but Next book. All right, friends, this is the rapid fire round. At least that's what I'm calling it. I read 3 of these books in the top 10. I don't want to say back to back. These 3 books that are listed back to back on the list, I've already read, and I was just going to briefly kind of tell you my thoughts and feelings on them and whether or not I think you should pick them up. So we've got Verity, we've got Phantasma, and we've got Quicksilver. Strike one, Verity. I didn't like this book. I thought that as a mystery thriller, this book was a quick read, certainly, but not exactly what I would call a real thinker. And not everything has to be a thinker, but when I'm reading a mystery thriller, that is personally what I am looking for. I want something a little bit more psychological, a little bit more twisty. This book was psychological and it was twisty. It was also just Colleen Hoover book. So if you like Colleen Hoover, maybe you'll like this. And I know some people don't really like Colleen's more romantic stuff. They prefer her more mystery thriller stuff. And in that case, more power to you, but it just was not my cup of tea. So we're just going to set that aside. I think I read that book back in, God, whenever it came out, like 2020, in a hot second. Let's talk about some of the newer ones, right? Phantasma, Quicksilver, 2 romantic books that I've read fairly recently. Phantasma, I thought was just okay. I wanted to enjoy this book more than I did, but I also didn't anticipate loving it because I'm not really a Caraval kind of girl. This book is a kind of deadly competition where our heroine is going to help save her little sister who has entered into this competition. I think they were trying to maybe win money to protect their family's estate after their mom passes away. I was initially kind of intrigued despite that premise, despite not really, again, loving a deadly game situation. The thing that kind of fell apart for me here was the romantic aspect. This is supposed to be, I think, like a spicy fantasy romance. I just felt like the hero was a little bit too forward. For my liking, he was very much like, you're so sexy, I'm incorporeal, but I want to fuck ya. Not for me. Not for me. I also felt like it just kind of wrapped up a little bit quickly with like the confessions of love and that sort of thing. So it wasn't perfect for me, but if you like Caraval, you'd probably like this book if you haven't read it already. And then lastly, let's talk about Quicksilver, which is a romantic book. And I think, honestly, if I'm looking at this list as a whole, spoiler, I'm actually filming this clip after having filmed like all the other clips. Quicksilver is probably the book on this list that I recommend more than any other because it's one of the only romances that I've read that I genuinely enjoyed. It does not reinvent the wheel. It does feel a little Sarah J. Maas-esque. And I think that that's actually kind of a good thing, to be honest with you. You know, sometimes I wonder if fantasy as a genre is kind of stuck in a standstill because we're all kind of copying Sarah J. Maas, or if that just kind of is what romantasy is. So you can change the world, you can change the characters all you want, but like they all kind of feel the same to me. And I don't feel like I have that problem when it comes to contemporary. But that being said, with Quicksilver, I felt like the plotting and the pacing of this book stood out to me as compared to some of the other romances I've read. I didn't like love the romance in this book, but I did find it compelling. I felt like the chemistry between hero and heroine was there. I was going to spoil it, but I'm not going to spoil it. The connection that they have. But I think that if you have been on the fence about trying this one, I would give it a go. If you don't like Sarah J. Maas and you just kind of are skeptical of romantasy generally speaking, I don't think this is going to change your mind. But if you like Sarah J. Maas and you've just kind of been itching for something that's similar, honestly, I think you would like this. And sure, you know, someone's gonna pipe up that not every romantasy book is Sarah J. Maas and she didn't invent romantasy, and it's like, she didn't invent it, but she did popularize it, and I think it's okay to compare things to her stuff, okay? That's what I have to say about those 3 books. Let's move on. Welcome to my glamorous life. Let's talk about Whispers in Wildfire by Claire Kingsley. Now, I don't know if I've ever read anything by this author before. I'm not hating this though. This is actually, I'm reading these books out of order. Just transparently, I am. This is one of the last books I'm reading, and this one is actually kind of decent and is reading, I would say, better than the majority of the books that picked up. It's not to say that it's mind-blowing or necessarily what I would have picked up on my own, but it is striking a balance between giving us some world building, I guess. Could we call it world building if it's like set in present day and not a fantasy? We are getting to know this little small town in, I think, Washington. We are getting to know our characters and their families and their hopes and dreams, and you know, things are getting interesting. What I think is actually really funny, and I wish I had my phone in front of me, is the overall vibe of the series. So I don't know what number this is in this book series, but it is definitely not the first book. What I'm gathering is that this is a romantic suspense series, and I can tell you that because we've been getting POV chapters from the perpetrator, who I'm sure is going to come up later in the book, which is fucking scary, but also because in one of the first chapters of this book, the hero is saying, you know, between my sister's stalker and my brother's murder plot and my other sister's whatever, like, it was really fucking funny. It was just a sentence, like a string of things that have happened to the people around him. He's like, but thankfully things are really calming down around here and everybody's having babies, which I think is honestly ironic because I'm sure something crazy is gonna fucking happen. But yes, romantic suspense series. Our hero, I literally just looked up his name because I'm actually reading 2 books at once and I kind of forgot his name, and I'm Luke. Just kidding. It's Luke. I remembered. Luke and Melanie. Luke is really into racing. He shouldn't be racing because his brother's a cop, and he's not drag racing like on the street, which is nice, but he races at this like abandoned track, you know, does it just to feel alive, just to feel something. He feels like his life is just a little bit empty, you know, everybody around him is getting married. He's not looking for a relationship per se, but he is looking for something just to feel a little bit more meaningful in his life, and that's gonna be our girl Melanie, who is his high school sweetheart, ex-girlfriend, and I guess they always used to kind of drive each other crazy. It's not really like an enemies to lovers relationship that they're in now that Melanie's back in town, but they definitely butt heads and don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, which is tricky because Melanie is back in town after a really nasty divorce, and she needs a part-time job until her full-time job, I guess, comes back. She's a voice actress, which I think is a cool job to give someone a romance novel. Anyway, she's a voice actress. She does it for a children's TV show, I suppose, but the season hasn't started yet. There's a non-compete, so she can't do no other voice acting gigs in the meantime, and she needs some money to kind of float her after this divorce. So she decides she's going to work part-time at, of course, her ex-boyfriend's auto body shop, because not only does he race cars illegally, he also owns an auto body shop, because of course those things go hand in hand together. My hair's looking so stunning. We're gonna curl the bottom part so it doesn't look so crazy. Basically, these two are just butting heads and working together and kind of fighting their attraction for each other. We're also, you know, learning more about the families and the, you know, small town that everybody's living in, which is nice. Our heroine is like making friends with the hero's sister and her friends. And, you know, honestly, it's just the small town vibes are good. The small town vibes are good. I also like that the antagonism between hero and heroine is not too overdone from what I can tell. I kind of still don't really understand why they butt heads so much, but I'm not like rolling my eyes the entire time. It's not like too over the top, which is nice. What I don't think I'm going to enjoy though, again, is the romantic suspense elements. I'm not even just finding, I'm not really into scary with my sexy. It doesn't really do it for me. I just think it can be kind of hard to fall in love. There's a looming threat of someone who's gonna like murder you or like tie you up. That's kind of what we're getting here. We're getting POV chapters from a man. I don't know if he has kidnapped this woman before or if he just really wants to kidnap her, but he is out of prison, tie this woman up and have his way with her. And I don't know if he wants to kill her or what, but it's coming for Melanie. He's gonna come to Tillicum is where we're living, and he's gonna do something bad to her. Why we need his POV chapters? I don't know. It's kind of giving like Black Dagger Brotherhood vibes with like the lesser chapters, if you know what I'm saying. A little disconcerting, to be honest. But hey, you know, we're setting a tone, and I think that if you're into romantic suspense, it's fucking suspenseful, this one. So, you know, I guess hats off to our author for that. It gives a dimensionality, I would say, to the perpetrator. So, is that good? Is that bad? Who's to say? But here we are. So, okay, 50% in, you know, and scared to get 100% of the way in, but I'll report back, and hopefully I'm not too scared to do that.
Okay, well, this being a romantic suspense novel, I don't really want to spoil it for you, but I will say that was so not good. Confused. I'm honestly confused because, like I told you, this is a pretty well-written book compared to some of the others. I feel like it was heading in a direction I was excited about. But at the 50% mark, the characters get together and then they just kind of stay together. Tension is totally broken, and I didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, sure, these two are working together in a work context, but I never felt any romantic tension, any romantic subtext even. And I feel like the reasons for them breaking up in the first place back in high school, we find that out stupid, honestly. Like, not to be an asshole, but just kind of dumb. And then the romantic suspense comes in, and that wasn't, the suspense was not there. Maybe romantic crime, I guess you could call this, because again, no suspense. Don't want to spoil it, but ow, not suspenseful whatsoever. I mean, I'm glad that it was relatively low stakes, but I don't like this subgenre. That is a personal me thing. I can acknowledge that is a me thing, and so I don't want to rate this book super low because of that. Like, I'd probably give it 3 stars. It was a totally fine reading experience, but putting aside, again, the romantic suspense being kind of lackluster and or me not even enjoying romantic suspense, the romance was just not very well developed. It went from, okay, we kind of don't like each other and we're working together, to, I can't stop thinking about you, I need to get in your pants, and then like, a day later, I love you, I'm sorry, I love you. What? Never stopped loving you? It didn't feel earned to me. I'm a little disappointed because reading these books out of order, and, you know, really hoping that that we would have a banger in here somewhere. It's just not really materializing, which, you know, it does happen from time to time. At least I'm having a fun time with this, you know, at least having a fun time. And hopefully you're having a fun time listening to me crash out just a touch. 3 stars. It was fine. It probably is one of the better books amongst the ones that I'm reading for this video, but that's not saying much. I'm going to proceed to finish the last book for this video so that we can be done with this.
Hello, hornies. What a way to greet y'all. Enchantra is what I'm reading. And I maintain that if you really liked Phantasma, you're really horny. And I think that Enchantra is continuing on in that same vein. So this book's about our main character, Genevieve. She gets asked to come to Italy after she participates in Phantasma. That's what they called the competition, right? That she was like in with her sister who had to save her ass. She gets called to Italy and she's like, you know what? My life's not going super great. I'm super bored. My sister's shacked up with the devil and they be banging a lot. And I just like, I need to get out of there. I need to get out of there and I need to live my own life. Who doesn't want to go to Italy, right? That sounds so fun. This guy that I guess asked her to come used to know her dead mom. And so she's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go. When she gets there though, things are a little bit amiss. I think this invitation was in fact, hello Pepper. Pepper decided he wanted to come hang with us. Not that the invitation was necessarily made in error. However, we have a situation in which Genevieve is getting pulled into a disastrous game that she really was not invited, I guess, to participate in. Different than Phantasma, right? Like, this is a game specifically for one family. He's getting roped into it. So, arrives at the estate. She gets kind of a cold welcome, not a welcome, get the fuck out. And instead, she enters the home. And when she enters the home, she kind of unwittingly gets roped into this competition, this game, if you will. This family has many children, all with very similar names, and they are basically competing in a game of like hide and seek, or like this like sort of competition, I guess you could say. Whoever wins gets to fat chill for a little bit until the next year when the games start up again. Then everybody who doesn't win gets to go chill in hell until the next game starts. Like not ideal necessarily. Basically, the patriarch of the family ended up making a bad deal with the devil, or with a devil, I guess you could say. Now, yeah, his family is forced to participate in these games, and they're looking for a way to, I guess, break free of these games, but we haven't really figured that out quite yet. And our heroine, and she's not part of the family, she's not really supposed to be participating in said games. She's there unless she wants to, you know, die or whatever the fuck fate would befall her. She is going to get married to one of the children. His name is Rowan, and he's like so sexy or whatever. She is going to partner up with him, and this is actually like a beneficial partnership. He's so cute. He keeps doing his little like roly-polies, showing me his belly. We're in the games. We're having fun. Prior to the games, there was like a little party where everybody was drinking horny juice, and Rowan and Genevieve couldn't really like fight their attraction for each other. She really wanted to get taken to Pound Town. That didn't exactly happen, but you know, the sexual tension is there, certainly. It's really bringing me back to Phantasma, because I feel like that book was also just like needlessly horny. I mean, not needlessly horny, I guess that's kind of the whole point. It's literally like Caraval if Caraval were an adult book with smut. So if that is your thing, I think these are really gonna check your boxes, you know? I don't know. I'm not really into a Deadly Games situation. That being said, I do enjoy this one more than I enjoyed the first book. First one, I felt like the insta-lust, insta-attraction, the let's bone down kind of thing. This like incorporeal man who was also like maybe a little too forward, isn't super my thing. This I'm enjoying more because enemies to lovers kind of aspect of it, not even enemies, but like hate to love kind of aspect, I think is making it more juicy. It's giving me more tension. I actually was kind of like intrigued by the idea of these two making out with the horny juice, which I didn't really anticipate. I didn't anticipate actually giving a shit. So far, I would say that this is arguably better than the first book. I think that it's a little bit more fun. I think the first book was just a little too chaotic for me. I didn't care about the necromancing. This one I'm liking more. I like the main character more a little bit. Although I will agree with some of the Goodreads reviews that say for a supposed strong heroine, she sure does get saved by men a lot. And I'm like, you know, I mean, that's true. That's true. You win some, you lose some, I guess. I mean, I don't lose some. I just win because I got Pepper Ann right here, who just loves me and gives me all the kisses. So, okay, anyway, I'm gonna finish this. I'll be back in a little bit. All right, I finished Enchantra. It was fine. I think that I definitely liked it less as the story carried on, which is disappointing to report back. I think after having finished it, it feels like it's on the same level as Phantasma to me, which is interesting because I feel like the first half of Phantasma I didn't like. And then it turned out to be okay. I think I maybe gave it 2 or 3 stars. This one, the first half I liked. The second half, I feel like the plot was just too repetitive. I felt like the character relationships and the character development wasn't really there for me like I wanted it to be. I felt like the conclusion of this book wrapped up a little bit too quickly for my liking. It wasn't that this book was short by any means. I think that we could have done a little bit more to like wrap up the romantic side of things. I think what I'm learning about this author is that she is more focused on the carnal aspects of relationships than on the puzzle pieciness, the true romantic compatibility side of things. And that's okay if that is what you're looking for, or you're not really looking to go deep with your stories. You just kind of want like a fun plot line and some like sexy times and some chemistry. She really provides that with this series and didn't hate the sex scenes. I think she writes a sex scene actually pretty well. And I was rooting for these two characters to get together. But after I finished, I was just left with this feeling of there's just something missing for me. Like there's something missing. I like a little bit more depth. And I'm not asking for every book to be deeply emotional and like have me sobbing. Like not everything has to be a Kennedy Ryan book, okay? Love Kennedy, but we can't all be Kennedy Ryan. Just a little bit more would have been nice. I also feel like the tidbits about like the mom, it was kind of the whole point of the story, but it didn't actually like get concluded or executed very well there at the end. And maybe it's teeing us up for the third book because there is apparently a third book, but I don't know that like the third book's going to be characters that are also like involved in this one. So anyway, it was fine. I think I'd give this book like, I'll be generous, 3 stars. How about 3 stars? I think 2 is maybe a little low because I didn't dislike this, but I think 3 might be a little 2.5. I'm not a half-star girl, but here I am for Folklore 2025 getting into half stars. So yeah, I mean, pick it up. If you liked the first book, I think you'd really enjoy this one. It's not a far departure. If you are someone who knows that you like a lot of depth in your romance, maybe not. If you like good old-fashioned fucking, then maybe it's for you, you know? I think he like pulls his dick out and sucks it clean down to the bone. I don't know if that was a detail you needed, but something noteworthy. Hello friends, change of scenery. I thought I would bring you into the car with us. I'm not 50% into Wildest Dreams by LJ Shen yet. I am, however, like 30, maybe 40% of the way in. And I think that my feelings aren't going to change, so I can update you right now. So this book's about Dylan and Ryland, which are names. Dylan was the sister of the hero in the last book. And to be honest, she was kind of a bitch, kind of annoying. I wasn't really like super hyped for her particular romance in this one. She is a single mom to a 3-year-old girl who is really precocious and really cute and fun, and the deadbeat dad is not really around, which is probably good. We like get introduced to him in the last book. I think the last book was set like right when her kid was born. I think she was pregnant with her kid. Flash forward a few years, she's trying to kind of like figure her life out and figure out like kind of what she wants to do to an extent, but she gets asked by her rich chef brother to come to New York from the small town that they grew up in to watch his apartment. Where is he going? I can't remember, nor do I care. But she's going to live in his apartment with her daughter and kind of like house sit for them for a while.
Is it just me? Are Dylan and Ryland like one letter off from each other?
Ylan, and then Ryland, Rhyland.
Still don't like it.
Yeah, Dylan's the girl, Ryland's the guy. I mean, who knows really, but I mean, I'm letting you know.
Well, I mean, I could have told you that, yeah.
Anyway, she is house sitting, I guess, at this apartment, and her neighbor is her brother's best friend. And her brother's best friend used to be a gigolo. Now he is no longer a gigolo. He's instead trying to get his app off the ground. Yeah. If it doesn't work out, he's gonna go back to being a gigolo. Apparently the apartment that he's like staying in is paid for by one of his clients, and he's like not gonna be able to afford, I guess, the rent on it. He again doesn't get the app off the ground, and the person he's trying to get to invest doesn't really like, I think he might know of Ryland's past, and so he needs to be like on the straight and narrow. So he's gonna fake be engaged to our heroine. So
A classic, a tale as old as time.
yeah, the setup for this book's very interesting. It's kind of giving like a Megan Quinn setup, to be honest, and here's the thing. I like originality. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to these setups. Like, if you're gonna do marriage of convenience fake dating, like, why do we need so much random fucking backstory? It just feels convoluted. It just feels like, yeah, I feel like generally some of my critiques of these books feel a little counterintuitive. I just finished critiquing a book where I was like, yeah, like, I wish there were more backstory. I wish there was more setup. I think the distinction here is that, like, the setup that we're getting is not, like, emotional backstory for our characters or their baggage. And I guess you could say him being a sex worker, like, for him personally feels like baggage, but I don't know. I don't think that we needed this like elaborate setup. I also don't really understand, like, she is having him babysit her kid, and I don't understand what she's doing. I think at one point says she wants to be a doctor. She's like working at a bar. I honestly don't really understand, to be 100%. I'm listening to the audiobook. Maybe I'm like just not fully like locked the
locked the fuck in. So that's on me, you know, I guess at some point that's on me. But I don't think I should have to be like laser fucking focused on a romance. I think it should just unfold naturally and I should be invested and just love it. And that's not really happening here. Granted, I didn't like the first book in the series. I thought it was kind of meh. I had like initially been into the concept. Execution wasn't there for me. And also LJ sex scenes are fucking weird. Like, why are we putting candy bars up our asses? I think in the last one, it might have been a carrot. Just remember,
less weird than a candy bar,
they're like,
for sure.
They're like in a commercial kitchen, two different things that go in, and it's not for me.
Sanitary for sure.
Not for me personally. And I'm not here to yuck your yum. Well, maybe, I mean, I guess that would be yucking a yum, you know, if it's going in an asshole. Glamorous Diva is at home. Glamorous Diva is not wearing pants, so I'm gonna cover up real nice. I finished the book. Everybody clap. Everybody clap. Here's the thing. Was it bad? No. Was it great? Also no. I think I'd probably rate this book 3 stars. It was strung together fairly well. There was a decent amount of depth. There was a decent amount of smut. There was a little bit of romance, if you want to call what this book was romance. I feel like the hero kind of was fucking annoying as hell. I feel like the heroine was also a little bit annoying as hell too. Here's the thing. Maybe it's because I've never been personally in this situation before, but I get a little irritated when a heroine has been through a lot, a heroine has struggled and suffered, and she's finally in a situation where someone wants to take care of her, and she's like, no, I can do it myself. I understand wanting your independence. What I don't understand is being stupid, frankly. Like, denying yourself a little bit of help seems silly. Like, her brother was like offering to pay for her medical school. He has the funds to be able to do that. I understand, you know, maybe wanting to pay him back or wanting to, you know, contribute in some way financially, but to completely poo-poo his help, say, I'm gonna try to save up over the years so that I can maybe go, it just didn't really make a lot of sense to me, honestly, and it felt like she was being needlessly stubborn, and I think that's a complaint that like a fair amount of people have when they read books with this kind of conflict, but that was pretty irritating. And then for the hero, just language usage, it was kind of a fucking giant douche, to be honest. I didn't really understand his hesitation to sleep with our heroine. Had been through some trauma. Maybe at a later date we'll discuss why LJ Shen decides that every hero that she writes for the most part needs to have some sort of trauma. But that's a story for another time. We can discuss that at a later date. I just am not sure that I understood his hesitation to like sleep with our heroine when they were both very attracted to each other, but it was probably for the best because when they did sleep together, sex was not to my personal taste, but we're all gonna have different personal tastes. I don't personally want to taste myself at dinner with other people, just a personal thing of mine. Yeah, just some things that I wasn't a huge fan of, but all of this being said, it was not a terrible book. So I don't want to say this might be the best we're gonna get. That's bleak. We do have another book to read, but it wasn't terrible. I mean, it really wasn't. It was decently well written. It was stylistic choices that I didn't necessarily vibe with. Okay, and then that's just gonna happen. That's just gonna happen sometimes. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. I think I'm gonna leave it there. I think I'm gonna go and wash my dirty ass hair, and I'm going to read the last book, Bridesmaid by Chance. Lucy Score really has a way with words, and by that I mean she uses a lot of them, and I don't know that we need to use that many words to say what we're trying to say. I think she's rubbing off on me because clearly I'm not able to communicate my points with words. This book's about Hazel. Hazel is in sort of a shitty situation because she is recently divorced from a man who she thought was going to be her one. He was kind of a dick though, and so when they divorced, he's basically forcing her to vacate the New York apartment she's lived in for quite a while. She doesn't know what to do from here. She's also in sort of a bind because she hasn't really published a book in a while. This divorce and everything has really made it to where she doesn't feel that creative spark anymore to write the romance novels that she is known for, which is putting her in hot water with her publisher. On a whim, she decides she's going to buy a fixer-upper in a small town and hopefully revitalize her love of writing small town stories, even though she's like never really lived in a small town herself before. Not that you have to like live in a small town to write a small town story, but anyway, she decides she's gonna move there, and she does, and she is instantly drawn into by the prospect of like hot men, I guess. She like sees this guy and she's like, oh, he looks so grumpy and sexy, like I'm gonna move to town. Not necessarily for him, but he sparks her interest, I suppose, in this small town. And once she gets there and she sees that this man is sexy and he has a bunch of brothers and they are in construction and they're gonna help her fix up her house, she's like, it's the perfect opportunity for me to fake date him. It's a perfect opportunity for me to like get this house fixed up and or to like live the small town dream I've always
had secretly in the back of my head. Just like not much is happening. That is my issue with this book. I don't think that the writing is poor. I think that Lucy Score definitely has a way with words in terms of writing these characters who are a little bit later in their lives, like late 30s, maybe into their 40s, who are kind of hot messes and who have a fun sense of humor. So I think that she and her writing can really appeal to a certain demographic. I'm not saying that I am too cool for that kind of story. I just think that sometimes the humor doesn't always land with me, and I think that her books tend to be very fucking long for no reason. This is not a complicated, complex storyline. We have a heroine who is trying to advance in her career and find love. She is fake dating this guy. She just had sex with him and called him King Cock, as in King Kong. Struggling with this book because I'm listening actively, and I don't feel like I need to actively listen to this book, frankly. Like, there's just not enough going on to justify, again, the length of this book. The audiobook at 3 times speed is like 5+ hours, which is crazy. Most audiobooks for romance, by the way, contemporary romance, about 3 hours. So a 500+ page book, again, not really, this is not a fantasy. This is not a particularly like emotionally rich romance. It just does not need to be nearly this long. And it is not devoid of development. It's not devoid of characterization. It's not void of any emotion. It's definitely not like the Kat Singleton book that we read, right? Which I'm not saying that was a bad book by any means, but it's not that kind of book, right? It's not like a little bit more focused on just the sex and the relationship. Like, there's a little bit more there, but again, not enough to justify this page length. And I don't want to just bitch about the page length the entire time, but that is really what I am feeling as I'm reading this book. It's fine. Had this been 300 pages, I could probably see myself giving this like 3 stars because it's not terrible, but I don't know that it needs to be this long. And again, the sex scenes. Why does she write her sex scenes like this? She describes his dick as tumescent. I know that she's a romance author, like the character in this book, and like, she's just being funny tongue in cheek, but like, I don't think that's not sexy to me. That's not sexy. It's not really like setting the mood. So I don't really see this being more than 2 stars, kind of like every other Lucy Score book I've ever read. But I picked this up because I was really curious. It was just her other small town series that I like wasn't really vibing with. And I think that this is really just showing to me that we're not gelling. Honestly, this book just felt like one big ethical dilemma to me. Mostly our heroine and her insistence on fake dating this man so that she would have content for her book. I don't know, it just kind of didn't sit right with me. It didn't totally work for me. Additionally, I didn't give a fuck about the townsfolk, and I just wanted this book to be over. I'm not going to dice my words here. I'm not going to sugarcoat, and I have in some of the other clips for sure. I've tried to be nicer, but this author's work is not for me. It's just simply not for me. And that's okay, because I know so many people love this author. They think that she writes the funniest stuff ever. They love her heroines. They love the messiness of it all. And I am so happy for you. I'm not happy for me for like investing so much time into this book that I really didn't vibe with. But, I'm just going to leave my 2 stars here. And we can read the last book.
Hello Divas. I'm looking extra amazing right now. We're gonna do some makeup together while I tell you about Bridesmaid by Chance by Megan Quinn, which I'm actually enjoying. Megan Quinn books tend to be pretty hit or miss for me. This angle is gonna be just absolutely stunning, I can tell. Anyway, her books tend to be hit or miss for me because Megan Quinn definitely has a sense of humor. She likes to infuse comedy into the majority of the books that she writes, and sometimes that lands for me and sometimes it doesn't. I think it's kind of dependent ultimately on characters and the sorts of situations that they get themselves into. Also just like how far she decides to take the humor. Sometimes it just does not land for me, but this time it kind of is landing. So our heroine Sloane is post-grad. She's like 22, trying to kind of figure out what she wants to do with her business administration degree. Really exciting stuff. Been there. And she is working for her brother's friend at his company as an assistant to the main dude, the assistant to her best friend Hudson. I wouldn't even call him a best friend necessarily, business partner. She has been working for him for a while, and she's not really happy with their relationship. Definitely not a dick like a lot of the other, I guess, similar characters for books like this, which is nice, but he's definitely not what I would consider to be like, super friendly. He doesn't ask her a lot of questions. And after he basically volunteers our heroine to be a bridesmaid for hire, which is like a whole thing within the series, she basically lays into him and she's like, you're kind of fucking disrespectful and you're not very nice to me. And she basically tells him to fuck off. She's like, I've held my tongue for too long. You need to like get it together and like treat me nicer. He ends up firing her, which I was not expecting at all. And I think kind of created a fun opening to the story. But after she's fired, a series of events happens where she needs to come up with $40,000 to be
be able to purchase the home that she is renting, down payment, obviously, for the house that she's renting. Otherwise, her and her sister are really going to have no place to go. Neither of them make a ton of money in their respective professions, and they have really grown to love this house. They had kind of a rough upbringing, and this house is like the first place that they ever really made their own. So our heroine decides to essentially proposition our hero and give him something he wants in return for something that she wants, which again is $40,000. And you know what? I love that she knows that this man is rich and she's going to like ask him for the money. I feel like some of the other heroines, Looking at You, heroine in Wildest Dreams by L.J. Shen, would not have the gall to do that, but I kind of like that the heroine in this book does have that gall. He basically says, hey, I'll marry you, which I know is going to help this business deal for you if you give me $40,000. And he doesn't really want to do this. It takes a little bit of like, say, begging on her part, but definitely some maneuvering on her part to make this happen, but it does indeed happen. And as a result of this marriage, she is now living with this man, trying to kind of get to know him in advance of, you know, them having to pretend to be a married couple in front of people. So it's a fun book. These two are definitely attracted to each other. I like that from the beginning, the heroine is the one who's like not head over heels for the hero, but like very much thinks he's sexy. I think oftentimes that does not work for me. I really like the hero to fall first, but in this case, I kind of like it. It's not like she's fawning all over him, but she can admit that he's really fucking fine. And he is definitely noticing her as well. Not that they are married, but he doesn't really want to act on it because she is 13 years his junior. So he's 35, she's 22. Which, you know, is a pretty significant age gap. Look at her bare ass as she gets changed and stuff. And honestly, it's a fun book. A book that's not doing too much. My issue with the books in this series so far have been that they tend to be a little bit on the unbelievable side with setups that like take way too much explaining. And I think that if I really have to sit here and spend like 15 minutes explaining to you the setup of a book, that's normally not a good sign. Like, it should be easy to explain to somebody what a book is about, I think. And maybe once they pick it up, it can have more complexity, but like, I want to be able to easily explain to someone what the fuck a book's about. I don't need this elaborate setup for a fake relationship, right? So yeah, I am enjoying this book. I like the banter. I like the humor. It's landing for me. I'm very curious to see how the fake relationship is going to play out in front of people, but I guess we'll get there and I'll let you know when I'm done.
Okay, I finished it and it went about as well as I expected. I actually didn't hate this book. Honestly, think that this is one of the better Megan Quinn publications in the past little while. Just feel like in every book that I've read of hers recently, there's either a really convoluted, confusing setup to the book, or we have humor again that just doesn't quite land. But in this one, I feel like the humor landed. The chemistry was kind of off the charts in my opinion between these two. I think she really built up the sexual tension throughout the story, which I really, really appreciated. I think for the majority of the books that are on this like top 10 bestseller list, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about my general thoughts and feelings in a second, but what I'm noticing is there tends to be a lot of emphasis on the sex and not as much on the relationship development. I can't say that this was like the most groundbreaking, the most heartfelt, the most, you know, puzzle piecey romance that I've ever read, but I think of all of the books that I read for this particular video that I hadn't like read previously, I still think I prefer like Quicksilver over this one. I think that this one was probably the best. So I guess it's kind of nice that it was like the #1 bestseller on Amazon. I think that Megan Quinn, like, she definitely has a very signature authorial voice. She really has a vision and she sticks to it, and I have to have some respect for that, honestly. Like, this was a fun book, and honestly my only true complaint about this book was that, again, like, I wanted more relationship development, but also I think the conflict of this book, I would have preferred to see it be caused by the heroine rather than the hero, if that makes sense. Like, he was the one that was kind of causing these two to be apart for so long throughout the story, so I wanted him to have more of like a muffins sort of groveling moment, and I don't feel like that was quite as strong as I wanted it to be. But overall, I'd probably give this like 3.5, 4 stars. It was genuinely a good time, and I think if you're, you know, looking for a romance that's like sexy, easy breezy, I think this is like worth picking up. So let's end off this video by kind of chatting about my overall thoughts on this experience, since it's been actually like, I think 2 years since the last time I've done this. But I think that it's always interesting to visit and revisit the Amazon bestseller list. It does change daily. This is not a set in stone sort of thing. And I think that I screen recorded back in April and you're seeing this in May. So it's been a little while, and I'm sure there's really completely different books on the bestseller list now. But I think what I'm kind of realizing in this video, and then kind of comparing my experience to a couple of other videos that I've done like this, the bestsellers tend to be books that are very heavy on the smut. And I don't want that to be my only sort of refrain, I guess, whenever I am talking about books and talking about what I don't particularly love. But I do think that there are a lot of books nowadays that tend to sacrifice the relationship development for making sure that the smutty scenes are things that you can quickly clip for TikTok and, you know, hook people in, and understand like things are titillating, sex is titillating, so it can be tempting to make that how you sell your book. But I think
when I get down to it, I'm looking for something a little bit deeper. And maybe it's also my taste changing. I'm not saying the onus is like on authors to change what they're doing. In fact, I never think that. I think you got to write to the market, you got to do what you have to do. But I think for me, I tend to just look for something a little deeper, you know? And I'm sure that Abby Jimenez's books like end up on this list as well, because it's not like KU exclusive, the like Kindle bestsellers list, like it's not, you know, KU exclusive. So I, you know, bet that there have been, and you know, if I went back and actually watched those old videos, I'm sure there's some that like have a little bit more emotional depth, but that's kind of the thing that I have been feeling like I'm lacking in the majority of the books on the bestseller list. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad place to go if you're looking for a quick, easy, breezy romance read and you like specifically come to romance for kind of the smuttier aspects. You're not looking to go super deep with your characters. Like maybe the ones on the bestseller list could be for you. And I don't know, I think it's fun to just know what is like popular at a given time. I like that. I like to kind of be in the know, even if I don't necessarily always love the most popular things. So fun time with this video. Hopefully that was apparent in the way that I talked about these books. I feel like I got kind of snarky and like, I don't know, funnier than things have been lately. I think also a big part of that is that I'm a lot less depressed than I have been for the past few months. So thanks for sticking with me, honestly, through all of this video, and just like for the past few months or past few years, honestly, however long you've been here. I do love y'all so much, and I will see you in the next one.